Hey everyone. My speech today is not going to be about me. It's actually going to be more about you guys. I want you guys to think of a moment when you needed help, but maybe didn't or hesitated to ask for assistance. Now, there's a lot of these cases in our everyday lives when a concept your professor explains doesn't make sense, when you need flexibility on a deadline, or when you just want to ask a friend for a favor. In times like these, when it can be hard to ask, wouldn't it be nice to have a clearer way to ask for what you need? You know, our lives are full of these times, these chances to ask whether we recognize it or not. A lot of the time, we aren't asking correctly, or we aren't asking at all. Sometimes we're too proud to ask, too afraid to ask, or just unsure how to phrase it when we ask. But asking takes things that had a 0% chance of happening and pushes that percentage far into the positive. Your chances of receiving increase immediately and significantly when you ask. I think there's three things that keep us from being better askers. The first one is ignorance, or what I call the I shouldn't have to ask argument. We don't ask because we don't want people to think we are injecting ourselves into their lives with an unwelcome request. Say I'm in a meeting with 10 people, and I say, hey, we need to email that restaurant back. Can somebody take care of that? Now this seems proactive, but it's actually useless. I've described what we have to do, but I haven't really asked anyone to do anything. Now, I might as well have said, hey, we need to contact President Obama. Can someone take care of that? The silence I'm going to get from that and my original question are going to be about the same. We all have this preconception that if people on the team really cared, someone would volunteer. It's a nice sentiment, but that's not quite how the world works. If you ask the universe, you'll get silence. But if you ask people, you'll probably get a response. Now, the fix here is really straightforward. Just be specific. Attach a name and attach a time to your request. What happens if I rephrase the question? Instead, I ask, hey, we need to email that restaurant back. Roger, can you take care of that tonight? Now Roger has a clear request to respond to. He's not going to hate you for asking. He's just going to say yes or no. More likely than not, he'll say yes, because it's a pretty reasonable request and I ask politely. Problem solved. Now I trust that Roger's going to take care of it. You got to remember that people aren't psychics. They can't sense what you want them to do. If I think someone would be really good at something and I don't ask them, we both just lost out on an opportunity. It takes the courage of one party to just set that pride aside and go and ask. The second thing that stops us from being better askers is low self-esteem. You know, sometimes you just draw the short straw in life. It's easy to say, oh, my life sucks when that happens. When most people end up with a bad deal, it doesn't occur to them that they can ask for something better. You are deserving of the finer things in life. It's just, sometimes you gotta go out there and ask for it. I'll give you an example. I was in China this summer, and the night before I flew back, I found out that my flight home was gonna be delayed by a whole day. Now, instead of taking the later flight, I decided to go to the airport that morning and see if I could maybe try to get on an earlier flight. So I found a check-in person right around 8 a.m., and I asked politely if there was a way I could get on the 11 a.m. flight. He told me there was no chance. The flight was already full. He kept shaking his head, so I just walked away. But I didn't give up right away. I found another check-in person, explained my situation, and she said she'd try to figure something out. Initially, I got the same response back from her. She told me all the flights were booked, but then I asked her if she could maybe check first class and economy plus. 1 minute later, she booked me on an economy plus ticket back on that early flight for no extra charge. I was rejected twice before I got what I wanted. So you can't let rejection slow you down. When something inconveniences you, don't just let that be the final verdict. Remember to ask for something better. The final thing that stops us from being better askers, I think, is fear, specifically the fear of rejection. Our minds love to spin up this vivid picture of all the things that could go wrong. What if they realize we're not good enough, not prepared enough, or asking for too much? Fear usually paralyzes us and prevents us from taking any action at all. The key is to acknowledge that fear, understand it's nothing more than something spun up by your imagination, and just go through with asking anyways. In freshman year, I had a pretty big crush on this girl. And I think a lot of us have been in this situation. I wanted to ask her out, but didn't really know how to ask. I didn't know if dating was something she was even interested in, much less with me. My mind came up with 1,000 ways that everything could go wrong, so I just didn't do anything. There was one night in February where I was messaging her on Facebook, and the topic of New York City came up. she'd never been to New York, and she talked about how she really wanted to go someday. Now, up until that point, I had a pretty rough day. So my mindset wasn't in that carefully conditioned, don't mess this up kind of state. So I called her. We talked for a little while, and I mentioned New York. It turns out I really wanted to go see New York too. The last time I'd been was when I was 8 years old. I took a deep, silent breath, and I said, hey, it looks like there's not much happening that first weekend of spring break. Do you maybe want to go to New York with me that weekend? I waited for her to laugh, to hang up on me. I waited for her to say, oh, with you? Of course not. But, she didn't say any of that. There was a short pause, and kind of nervously I heard her say, yeah, I've got to check my schedule to be sure, but I think I'll be free that weekend. Let's do that. I was the king of the world. I was victory music going through my head. I felt so good, but I couldn't stop there. I'd gotten one yes, so I followed up, and I said, okay, check that if you can. We better meet and plan it out a little bit. Do you want to get dinner and hang out this Friday? That ended up being a date, and the spring break trip ended up happening and going pretty well. She and I dated for about a year, and it was one of the best years of my life. There was a point when I stopped worrying about fear. When you ask, you always face rejection. But is it really that bad? The person you're asking can't take anything away from you. You literally have nothing to lose. If you get rejected, you're right back where you started. Once you understand that that is the only thing at risk, it's just some pride, you don't even have to lose that. When you're afraid, fight through that fear and ask anyways. I mean, you never know what you might get. We don't ask because of pride, because we're afraid that we don't deserve any better, and because we're afraid of rejection. But these are all constraints that we impose on ourselves, and they can be overcome once you understand them, what they are. The benefits from being a better asker will affect every part of your life. So now go out there and put it into practice. Tomorrow when you go through your day, catch yourself in those situations when you don't really want to ask, but figure out what it is that's holding you back. If it's pride, tell yourself, if I don't ask, they won't know what I want. If it's self-esteem, tell yourself, I deserve this. I deserve the best. And if it's a fear of rejection, tell yourself, I don't have anything now, and worst case scenario, nothing's going to change. Learn to ask. You'll be amazed at how much easier life becomes. Ask and you will receive. Thank you, everyone.